friends. So I've been having a little mental breakdown for the past month and a half. I honestly don't know how long it's been, but I do remember, I think a few podcast episodes ago, I was talking about how I was sort of emerging from this little rut that I was in. Basically, I had eventually gotten to the point where I could not do anything anymore, and so I had spent the weekend being unproductive, just laying in bed, watching Ginny and Georgia, crocheting. That was basically when I thought my breakdown was coming to an end. I did not think that my breakdown was going to last beyond a 2-week time period. I thought that was the end. I thought I was going to get out of it. I thought, a new week, new me, new mentality, like everything was going to be fine. We have our better days, we have our worst days. I thought it was the end of my worst days and the start of my better days, but I was wrong. Fast forward to many weeks later, here I am, still in the crux of my mental breakdown. So for today's episode, in honor of my month and a half long mental breakdown, we are going to be talking about mental breakdowns today. We all have them. It doesn't matter what point in life we're at or what's happening within our lives. People can have mental breakdowns for literally any reason. Life is hard. We're all dealing with our personal struggles. And so it's normal to feel like everything is just overwhelming and nothing is going right and that life is crashing down on us. And this is what I've been feeling a lot of lately. This constant feeling of being overwhelmed, this constant feeling of anxiety and dread to move on to the next day. I've reached the point where I feel so overwhelmed sometimes that I almost feel numb to it. It's this negative, monotone numbness that just lingers over my head. And there's only so much of that emotion that I can feel before I completely self-destruct. I feel like everything is suddenly piling up. Problems from here, problems from there, all of these little aspects of my life are just crumbling down on me. And I've just had breakdown after breakdown. My emotions are going haywire right now because I'm so tired. And I feel like once you hit your young adult years, you kind of start to see yourself having more frequent mental breakdowns because you're learning and experiencing and encountering so many new and challenging things. And there are so many big transitions and so many things that you have to deal with that a lot of the times it can just lead to reaching our breaking points, no matter what the situation is. It could be school, it could be work, it could be family, it could be friends, it could be literally anything. And sometimes things are just really hard to deal with and cope with, and so we reach the point where we just completely lose it. We completely go insane. For me, the cause of my mental breakdown has primarily been due to work these days. I've been really struggling at work lately. I started my first full-time job, maybe 5 months ago. And in the beginning, I was really nervous to start that job. I didn't know if I was capable of actually being able to successfully take on the role. I may or may not have just girl bossed my way a bit too close to the sun, if you know what I mean. That was one thing that I was really nervous about going into my job. But the other thing that made me nervous, I would say this was maybe 60 to 70% of my worries going into the job, was the fact that my social anxiety would possibly hold me back. In the beginning, I could not bear the thought of working alongside people who had 7 times the knowledge and experience that I had, people who were twice my age. I know that's perfectly normal in a work setting, but because I've always had social anxiety, I couldn't even envision myself feeling comfortable enough to communicate in that type of environment. I mean, as someone who gets extremely uncomfortable having to order food or talk to a cashier, I knew way before I started working that my social anxiety was going to be a problem. I didn't know how I was going to make it through talking to people, to put it straight, just talking to people. And so that was my worry at the beginning. But I did think, maybe over time, I'll get used to it. I'll grow my people skills. I'll grow my talking skills. I'll learn how to function in the professional world with my introverted tendencies. But here I am 5 months later. I think I'm struggling worse than ever. I have not gotten over the social anxiety at all. And because of this, I have to endure going to work every single day with this constant fear of just talking to people. All I feel is constant anxiety. Anxiety about knowing what to say, doing the wrong thing, sounding completely stupid. And, I'm just struggling. And I think I'm especially struggling because in the past 5 months, I really haven't been able to connect with anybody. Like, nobody has really ever asked about me. Nobody has attempted to make small talk. And when I try to do it, the conversation gets nowhere. So there's this like lack of basic human connection that makes it 1,000 times harder for me to feel comfortable speaking in that environment. So just waking up every day, knowing that I have another 6 meetings to tackle, knowing that I have to lead half of the meetings, there's just constant anxiety that I'm feeling that I could never get a break from. I would take 45 minutes to write a simple email response. And for all of the meetings that I would have to lead, I would write down scripts of all of the possible scenarios that I would need to talk about because I'm new to it all, and I know everybody is new to it all. But this social anxiety thing is really getting the best of me right now. I feel like it's really been a roadblock in my ability to progress and grow just as a person and also professionally. It's making me look incapable. I seem stupid. I seem incoherent because my social anxiety basically prohibits my brain from functioning in any normal way or in any normal conversation at work. On top of that, I just feel overwhelmed because I've been working like 10-hour days. I feel like suddenly everything's piling up and I'm like, how did my days go from 8 to 10 plus hours? I've always been someone who really wanted to separate work life from personal life because I'm passionate about my personal endeavors and I didn't want work to become the only thing that I focus on in life. But now I feel like I have to dedicate so much time to just getting my work done. And I feel like I'm losing myself in this whole process. I'm like, okay, my brain does not have the capacity to process anything else. Last but not least, on top of all of that, there was something that just really pushed me over the edge. This is what caused me to have like 7 different meltdowns in the past week. So, basically, I have to go on this work trip. And this work trip is gonna last a whole week. This is my first time traveling alone. And in this work trip, I have to talk to lots and lots and lots of professionals over breakfast, over lunch, over dinner. In between that, that's a lot for me. Like, I can't even imagine how the situation is gonna play out. I'm gonna be the youngest person there, talking to a group of highly developed professionals who know what they want to say, and I have to hold conversations for 8 hours for a week. I quite literally don't know how I'm going to make it through this work trip. This is an introvert's worst nightmare, and I feel like I simply can't get out of it. I am literally going to have a breakdown right now. I'm going to cry. No. I'm going to stop my tears right now, but just thinking about it, it's given me so much anxiety on a regular basis. Like, I can't wake up feeling okay. I can't fall asleep feeling okay. I quite literally think this trip is going to destroy me. Like, I don't know how I'll make it through. I need to prepare. I have 2 weeks before this trip, but with my 10-hour work days and my constant stress and anxiety from having to run meetings and having to know what to say to people, how am I even going to find time to prepare in these next 2 weeks? I know there are people who would jump at the opportunity to travel for work, or, running meetings is no big deal to them. So part of me is like, I don't even know how to communicate this with people because it might sound completely stupid. Like, some people just don't have social anxiety to that extent. I think I'm going insane. I feel like I need to cry. I feel like I need to scream. But it's funny because in this whole month and a half, I have not been able to cry until I was just speaking briefly a moment ago, and I was like, okay, maybe these tears are coming, but now's not the time because I need to record this podcast. That's essentially what has been causing my mental breakdown lately, and it's been taking a toll on a lot of different aspects of my life. I haven't been able to take care of a lot of my basic responsibilities. It's hard to wash my face. It's hard to get out of bed. I haven't responded to anyone's texts. I'm immobile. Like, I won't get out of bed to do anything. I feel like I'm being extremely lazy and it feels completely wrong. Like, I feel like I just need to be productive and do something, but I can't. And even though I know that I can't, it feels so wrong. I feel like I need to do something. And then when it comes time to sleep, I don't want to sleep. I will push my limits to stay awake as late as possible because that means the next day I have to wake up and deal with it all over again. Like, I just want to push my limits, stay awake, and enjoy my time where I don't have to work. I'll try to watch TikToks for as late as possible. It goes into the AMs, but like that's not good because then I have to wake up in 4 to 5 hours to work again. And this exhaustion is sort of just catching up to me where 2 weeks ago I was trying to record the next podcast and I simply couldn't. I think I recorded it 10 to 12 times. I was switching topics, I was re-recording, I tried editing, and I couldn't do it. And I was so frustrated with myself that I couldn't even record a remotely decent podcast, but my body was breaking down at that point. So I eventually just gave up and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to post a podcast that week. It's gotten to the point where, okay, let me backtrack with the story a little bit. So I have not been at home for the past week. I work remote, so I went back to my old college town, stayed there for a week, worked there. It was just a little escape from reality because I work primarily at home. So me being at home, I feel like I started to associate a lot of my work and my stress and my troubles with being at home just because I work at home, and that's where a lot of my mental breakdowns are stemming from. So I wanted to go on a little mini getaway, so I decided to go spend a week back in my college town. The days went by quickly, and eventually the week was over, and I knew I had to go back home, but I really did not want to, because going home meant that I was 1 week closer to going on the work trip, and I was dreading that with a passion. So I started looking up flights to Vegas. I was like, you know what? If there's a cheap flight tonight, I'm literally going to hop on this plane and dip because I wanted to escape reality. I was checking all of the nearby airports and I was like, okay, how much are the tickets to go to Vegas right now? Unfortunately, for some reason, every single ticket was like over $500. And I was not about to drop that kind of money just to stay for like one night in Vegas. But if those tickets were decently priced, I would have dropped everything, packed a backpack, went to Vegas, escaped reality just for a day, so I wouldn't need to think about it back at home. Who knows? Maybe I wouldn't have bought a ticket back home. Maybe I would have just left all my belongings and went MIA and decided that I didn't want to deal with any of these problems again. But unfortunately, it was just all too expensive. So that's just a little overview of the mental breakdown I've had in the past month and a half. When people tend to have breakdowns, they're obviously so overwhelmed with life. They're feeling all of these emotions, and it can really take a toll on just how we operate in everyday life. Yet, even though it can be a big challenge to deal with, people are really good at hiding their breakdowns. When you're in a crowd of people, you don't want anyone to know that you're going through it. So a lot of the times we're alone when we have mental breakdowns. We cry in our rooms. We cry when nobody's around. And if you hear the footsteps of somebody walking to your door, it's like you wipe away the tears. You pretend you're perfectly fine. Nobody will ever be able to tell that you were, just 2 seconds ago really going through it. There's all this pent up feeling of being overwhelmed, but we put on this face of like, we're perfectly fine. We're perfectly okay. We don't need anybody's help. And putting on that front can only last for so long until you completely give in to that pressure that you're putting on yourself to keep it together. And that can almost make our breakdowns worse than they need to be. And when you sort of reach that breaking point, it feels like there's no escape from it. There's no way to get out of it. It's so easy to fall down a rabbit hole of feeling like you're failing or that nothing's going right in life. And when you're at that point, it can feel like this is going to be life forever. It can feel like, how am I supposed to escape this if it doesn't seem like anything is getting any better? For example, sometimes it feels like there's no way for me to escape my social anxiety because this is how I've been my whole life. And so if that's the case, how is work ever going to become any more bearable, And I start to think, is this what my next 40 years of working is going to feel like? Is this what life is going to be for me until I retire one day? And it makes me feel miserable when I think that because I don't feel good right now. And, am I still going to be struggling with my social anxiety 40 years down the line? Like who knows? But, it's easy to get caught up in these thoughts where we feel hopeless. These thoughts enter your mind and they continue to consume your brain as you're at your weakest point. When you're weak, what do? You start to accept what life is giving you. You don't feel like fighting it anymore. And it becomes this negative feedback loop of, okay, I'm at my low point. My thoughts are eating me up. They're making me reach this even lower point. My thoughts continue to eat me up. The worse you feel, the more accepting you are of feeling bad. It comes to a point sometimes where there's just no will to improve, and it's so extremely hard to find the strength or the empowerment to be like, hey, I'm going to get up today, and things for me are going to get better, and things are going to go the way I want. It's just hard to change your mentality like that, flip of the switch. I see on TikTok, people are like, just be delusional, act like you'll get whatever you want and it'll happen. Pretend you're this, pretend you're that, and it'll work. But in reality, it's not that easy to escape your struggles by just being delusional or, saying that, hey, I'm gonna wake up today and be amazing. Like, it can be motivating, but realistically, it's not that easy to just flip how you feel. I think it's important to realize that we deal with a lot of shit in our young adult years. We all have our personal struggles. And like I said earlier, the rate at which we're living life and learning new things and experiencing everything, we're doing it at such a fast rate. And we're navigating this whole new world with all of these new different factors. And it's challenging. Becoming a young adult has its own challenges. We have our struggles with school. We have our struggles with work. We have to deal with finances. It's like, especially work and finances, like that's all a whole new world to navigate. And on top of that, we're also dealing with family and friends and societal norms and the pressures of all of that. And then on top of that, we have our own other personal challenges. Mentally, how are we doing? So it's like, with all of that we're dealing with, sometimes there's only so much we can handle. And my reminder to you and me, to the both of us, is that is okay. Even if it might feel like nothing's making sense or that our feelings are stupid or that we're being completely dumb, like everything that we're dealing with and everything that we're feeling is valid because we are dealing with so many different things. We might not be able to relate to each other in terms of the causes of our mental breakdowns, but we're young and we're dealing with all of this shit, and it's like, how are we not supposed to have mental breakdowns? Like, I am experiencing a lot of emotions right now. I have the right to be overwhelmed. It doesn't feel good, but I think realizing that it's okay to have this sort of mental breakdown makes you feel a little bit less guilty, makes you feel a little bit less bad about going through something like this. And it's also a reminder that we're all going through it, It might seem like everybody's happy on the outside and everybody has it together, but in reality, they don't. And my other reminder to you is that we've had mental breakdowns before. We've reached our absolute breaking points before. We've experienced times where we've cried so much that, our eyes couldn't shed any tears anymore. Or we've experienced feeling overwhelmed so much that we just needed to scream at the top of our lungs or break things or punch things or whatever. We have reached our absolute breaking points before. But what happened after that? We survived. Not only have we survived, we've seen happier days after our breaking points. And if we could get through our low points one time, then we can do it again. Of course, in the moment, it doesn't feel good and it doesn't feel like we're going to make it through. But the reality is, over time, you will make it through. It might not be in the snap of your fingers like, oh, I will feel better tomorrow. It might take weeks or months, but you won't stay at your breaking point forever. This is a reminder that you can only go up from here. So that's sort of just my spiel today on my mental breakdown, and who knows, maybe I'll just go sit down and cry after this. I probably will. This kind of helped me process my thoughts a little bit. But you know what? Sometimes that's what you need, a good cry. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you guys next week with another episode. Bye, friends.